Sometimes you're dealing with people, they are simply not happy in their life in general, no matter how good it is and how beautiful it is. When you're guiding a group of people, you're dealing with lots of people, and,
Hmm.
and it's not always an easy task.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of I Know This Guy, the podcast where we dive deep into the lives of some of the most interesting people I know. Before we get started, please like and subscribe to I Know This Guy wherever you get your podcasts. By the way, my kids want me to say something about ringing a bell. What the hell's a bell?
So, Dad, who do we have lined up for the podcast today?
We're doing something a little different today. We're meeting two people, one Pemba Sherpa, the other one David McKean, and they have a company called Sherpa Chai. Now, we're going to dive deep into Pemba's background as a Sherpa, living in Nepal, also his entrepreneurial spirit, and their brand culture, which is incredible. So wait till you hear some of this stuff. Wait till you hear the story and what this person's done, not only for the company, but for his village back in Nepal.
Amazing. Can't wait to hear about it.
Really is amazing. All right. So welcome to the podcast, Pemba and David.
Good to be here.
Yeah, good to be here. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's awesome to have you guys on here. I was lucky enough to have David on another podcast that I have called Lunch with Norm, Rise of the Micro Brands. And he blew me away with the story of your product and your brand, Sherpa Chai. And when I heard it, I wanted to so David is a really cool guy, and he just spoke with so much passion. But then he kept talking about Pemba. And I'm going, well, I got to learn more about Pemba Sherpa. And because you have an amazing story, sir.
Thank you.
And I think that's where I'm going to start. But first of all, let's just talk a little bit about the brand Sherpa Chai. And anybody who's ever heard this podcast before, I don't promote brands. I usually just talk about interesting people, their accomplishments, what they do, and their brands are secondary. This one, I got to switch it around because your brand, when I talked to David about it, stood out. And I want to talk about really the brand and its culture, its story, and I think it is surrounded by you. So first of all, the brand is Sherpa Chai. What is, for those people that don't know chai, what is it?
Well, chai is basically tea. Okay. So it's a tea that, people have drinking in their part of the world for thousands of years. So basically it's a tea. Chai is a tea.
It's interesting because I know that when we were talking on the other podcast, we talk about tea, then we talk about chai, but it's different. It's just a different type of tea than the regular tea that would be grown in Nepal, correct?
Well, the tea leaves are pretty much grown the same everywhere in the world. I mean, basically, it's all depend how the process is.
Oh, okay.
So whether you make matcha or green tea or black tea, and the tea roots and leaves are pretty much the same. It's all depend how the process is. And let me tell you the history of the chai tea.
Sure.
The chai is chai means literally, basically means tea in the Mandarin. Okay, and when the British were in India, back in the 18th, 19th centuries, when the British were in India, and the British drink the tea before, even Chinese and the British, and the British know tea has a lot of benefit to the health, and they were drinking all the times. They were giving the tea to their server or helper to the Indian people, and then the Indian didn't really like the taste of the tea, and they don't know, and they don't see the value, and they don't know the benefit of the tea they were drinking. And the Indian really didn't like the tea. So what they did was, they added milk, they added sugar, they added different spices, cinnamon, and then it tastes better. So that's how it actually became the chai. That's how the chai started.
So when you're talking about chai tea, chai is there different types of spices? It's not, okay, and I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. So if I'm thinking of regular tea, milk, sugar, pretty simple. Would chai have specific spices, or if you add different spices, it would be a different type of tea?
Well, more specific spice, for example, like cinnamon, cardamoms, gingers, cloves. Yeah, all those spices are added, but not like, not like chili pepper or anything like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, who knows? Chili peppers might be good.
Yeah. So.
Well, I wanted to, just get that out of the way. We're going to be talking more about the brand and what it stands for a bit later on. But let's get some backstory. So you're originally from Nepal.
Yes.
Okay. I ask every guest this. What makes Pemba Pemba? Can we go back and can you talk about some of the things that in your life are some interesting facts that made you who you are today?
Well, my background is I'm really a mountain person. I'm a mountain guide. I grew up in a very remote, very poverty, extremely poverty village where there's no electricity, no plumbing, no running water, no roads. That's where I grew up. And when I had to go to school, I had to walk 3 hours to get to school in one way. And my mom used to make me this product, which we were serving, our brand chai, every morning before I go to school. And then when I was about then later on, I started working for the tourism industry, and then when I was about 17 or so, I became a guide there, professional guide and full-time guide. And then I came to the U.S. when I was after guiding many climbers and clients there, I was kind of curious about the West, and which I finally come out here in 1991, which is when I was 19. With my background and connections, and I set up an adventure company where I guided people around the world for 20 plus years. And I was partnered up with the Colorado Mountain Club, which is one of the oldest organizations in the U.S. The Sierra Clubs, one of the largest environmental organizations in the world, the American Alpine Clubs. So I was kind of their main guide for taking people in that part of the world. And we had office in Africa. We had office in Bhutan. So my background really is I'm an adventurous. I was a professional climber at one point in my life. I'm a traveler. So that's really is my background.
So I got to ask you, you're dealing with the public. You're dealing with a lot of people that can come and afford to go and go on these adventures.
Right.
Let's think about were there any stories that stick in your mind that were really great, incredible, and were there any? I'm trying to do this politely. Were there any just jerks out there that you just wish that you'd never met?
Of course. Of course, that happened everywhere in every countries. And I don't like to say this, but usually when I guide a big group of people, there's one or two people, usually one people, always they can cause a big, can be, problem.
Is there one thing in your mind that you were asked to do something outrageous when you're on a trip like this, and you just you couldn't put your mind around it? Like somebody asked you to, I don't know, go down the mountain and grab something, or just to bring up something, as you were guiding them. I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, it's not an easy job. Lots of time. You're dealing with the clients who never, who don't have much experience being up in the mountains. There are sometimes clients who are not physically fit enough to be there. Sometimes you're dealing with people that are simply not happy in their life in general, no matter how good it is and how beautiful it is. When you're guiding a group of people, you're dealing with lots of people, and and it's not always an easy task, and it's not always that. And you also meet lots of wonderful people, which I have, and But one thing is that I grew up in the Buddhist community, where things are calm, and since I was a little kid, I've been taught how to be patient, how to deal with difficult things. I grew up in a very harsh, extreme conditions, and those kind of things actually taught me well to serve, this kind of situations.
Because I was going to ask about how did you get around those? I know that I have to deal sometimes with people that aren't the nicest, and usually I try not to deal with those types of people, but there's always the good ones that make up for it,
right?
But patience and how you overcome somebody's in your face, or
Yep.
very demanding.
Yep.
You just take a breath and just okay, I just have to get past this person. How do you handle that?
That's pretty much it. I mean, yeah. Yeah. But like I say, where I grew up, I grew up in a Buddhist community where, people are calm and patient, and, let it go some difficult things. And I think that served me well in life.
So I know David had traveled over to Nepal with you, and when he said, "Oh yeah, the village was isolated," David,
Yeah.
it wasn't just isolated. Why don't you talk about the trip that you had to walk, or how long it took to get to the village?
Well, so for us, it was actually a little bit easier, right? So I wanted to see Pemba's village. That was part of the whole mission on why I was going as part of this trip. And so I was very excited to finally, see this bridge that he had built so that the children didn't have to spend 3 hours getting to school every day like he did as a child. And the stories he told me about the old bridge and watching a friend get washed away when he was 11. And so I was very excited to see this, but Pemba said, we're taking a helicopter to the village. And I was like, oh, great. Okay. I like going on helicopters. That sounds like a lot of fun. And at another point, I asked him, I said, if we didn't take a helicopter, how could we get here or whatever? And Pemba's answer to me was, well, there's a bus and it'll take you to this place. And then it's a 7-day walk from the bus to the village. And I was like, wow, thank God we have a helicopter,
Hearing about that bridge, and Pemba, you were talking about, your 3-hour trek to school. That was one way, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's a one way.
And I know Hayden's going to probably pop up and say, oh, I've told him, when I was young, I had to, and his eyes roll. But 3 hours, 6 hours a day of going to school. My gosh. Dave brought up a good point. I wasn't even going to go there yet, but you actually built a bridge because of a disaster that happened earlier on in your life, and to make things easier for your village, that would cut that down to 45 minutes?
Half hour.
So
Norm, it was 45 minutes. It was the estimate for somebody like me to make that walk, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's still 3 hours for me.
Probably actually closer to at least an hour for me or you to walk it.
Yeah.
But for these kids in the village there, they go up and down these mountains all day, every day. And they don't think anything of it,
Oh, that's great. And again, Pemba, can you tell us a little bit about that? You went back after being in the States and you just built this bridge?
Yeah, actually, ever since I was a little kid, because when we were going to school back in those days, front of my eye, my colleague, or my friend, he fell on the makeshift bridge, and the body was drowned, and and ever since that, I always wanted to build a suspension bridge when I grew up, and I had that thing in my mind sticking. And then, of course, I grew up and I moved to the U.S. and I never forget that. Reflecting those days, and that's how I wanted to build this bridge, and I was guiding a group of Americans, I believe, like big group of Americans, and one night after the dinner, we were sitting by the fires and we were chatting, and I was mentioning to the group that's how I went to school like that, and that's how, if we had this permanent bridge, how that would shorten the time. So I was mentioning to the groups, and then there was one guy in the group. His name is Ken Stover. He's actually from Portland, Oregon, and he asked me how much money I needed it. And I already did a calculator. I had in my mind that regardless what, I was going to build this bridge, when I have some fun or when I make some money or whatever. So anyway, I was mentioning the group, and Ken was asking me how much money I needed it. And the whole project cost about $20,000, which I already had in estimate. And I mentioned to him that, and when we got back to the U.S., he actually wrote the whole $20,000 check.
Wow.
So, and with the money, once I have the cash, it's not a hard thing. So I simply went back to Nepal, hired engineers. We ordered all the material from India and, taken over to the village by helicopters. And then we built the bridge, and the project was done in about 4 or 5 months. And the guy who actually designed and built the bridge, the engineer, he actually worked for government. And he was telling me that, if the government had to build this bridge, it would take about 3-4 years. But we were able to do it in like 3-4 months. And then I told Kent that, hey, you got to go back and see this bridge. And, I took him back to Nepal and showed him the bridge and how that fund really helped build this bridge, and all the villagers got together, and the project was complete. So it was a beautiful moment for all of us. But anyway, yeah. My big thanks go to Ken Stover, who actually funded the whole project.
So that makes up for 100 guys yelling in your face to do stupid things, right?
Yep. That's right. More. Yep.
So let's talk about, now you're in the States. You've been in the States for a little while. You're doing some guiding with the Sierra Club. And
I have. I'm not guiding too much right now. Yes. Yeah.
But during that time, a little bit about your adventures. Where were you going? What kind of mountains were you climbing? You free climb, don't you?
I used to. I compete climbing with some of the best climbers in the world back in mid-90s. But nowadays, I just climb for enjoyment, and that's my passion, and that's who I am, and that's what I enjoy doing it.
I know that you're addicted to it, because even on the last podcast, we're talking with David, and where's Pemba? And he goes, out climbing.
Yeah.
How many days a week do you climb?
Well, it depends. I climb as much as like 3-4 days a week.
Yeah.
But I do some other activities. But usually about, if I get out like 2 days a week or 3 days a week, that's good for me.
Other than climbing, what have you been doing from being a guide? Is that when you opened up the restaurant?
Well, that was back in the almost about 20 years ago. I was really into technical climbing, and I was competing with some of the best climbers in the world, actually, back then. And then Boulder, Colorado was the best place for me to be based at, because all the good climbings are within a mile. Mm. And at the same time, I was also looking some business opportunity, and I saw there's a need for good, authentic Nepalese restaurant. And for me, I saw a business opportunity there, and there's a need for it, and perfect place for me to be in. And that's when I started the Sherpa's Adventure Restaurant in Boulder, and that's where we actually start serving the Sherpa Chai there first,
Oh.
about 19 years ago, and it's still today. I mean, we stay with the same recipe, and we're one of the popular restaurants in the town.
I had no idea until David came on the other podcast, what Nepalese cuisine would be. Hayden already knew, and as soon as I started hearing some of these dishes, it was like, all right, I got to go into Toronto and find. I got 9 restaurants in my town here, and 3 of them are pizza joints. There's only a couple of restaurants here.
Yeah.
I got to get into Toronto and try some. There's probably a lot of people listening right now that I hope I'm not the only person that doesn't know what Nepalese cuisine is. Let's go over a couple of dishes. What are they similar to?
Well, I mean, the Nepalese dishes is somewhat similar to Indian dish, but it's a little less spice and less oil.
Okay.
Okay, and then I'm a Sherpa tribe. My ancestor, they came from Mongolia. So, and we eat a little different type of dish, which is like a noodle with broth and the dumplings with broth and stew and things like that. And we serve that in the restaurant as well. And yeah, those dishes are very different from Indian dish.
Hayden, one of our favorite restaurants. You know what I'm talking about? A place with the pulled noodles. That was Mongolian too.
Yeah, or it was partially.
There's
a lot of
They had incredible. So, and David was telling me that his favorite was the thick noodle dish. Sounded like what we were eating. What was it called?
Tukba is one of the
Tukba.
Yeah, it's a thick noodle dish that Pemba makes at the restaurant.
Yep.
And I have at least one daughter that's she goes out of her way for it. In fact, she goes down there with her high school friends on a regular basis and has meals at the restaurant just to go for that. So,
well, I doubt very much if this is ever going to make the Food Network, but but what I'd like to be able to do is in the show notes, if anybody's interested, we're going to have a couple of pictures of some of these dishes. I hear it's incredible, so we got to check it out. I know I'm going to check it out when I get into Toronto and outside of my pizza joints here.
Yeah.
So, all right. So you've got the restaurant. Sherpa Chai was developed within the restaurant, so just small batches that you were making primarily for your restaurant in Boulder, and then it expanded out.
Yes, I mean, this chai was the first we served there. I mean, it's authentic. It's a family recipe, and of course we serve at the restaurant, and we are brewing like gallons and gallons of chai every day and serving to the customers. And there are many customers, they ask me like, "Hey, your chai is really good. You should bottle it." And I didn't really thought about it, and I was keep hearing more and more that. And then I actually went out there and did some research and study it. See, maybe there's a need for it. Maybe there's a market for it. And I went out there and did some, study. And surprisingly, I saw like a handful of chai products. And then I also saw like a huge market where lots of people drink it. And then I said, wow, maybe there's a market. There's a need for it. And I went out there and I tried all the chai tea product out there in the market. And I don't like to put other people's product down. But personally, I didn't find one product that is authentic. Chai should be like when you drink it, it should be relaxed and smooth. And I whether saw it's too much spice or too much sugar, or I didn't saw one that really authentic one. And then that's when I grabbed the attention. I'm like, hey, okay, there's a need for it. There's no authentic chai product in the market. We're gonna start it.
I have a buddy that lives in Colorado, and I don't know how we got on this subject, but I was mentioning that I was going to do a podcast with you guys. and his ears perked up. Sherpa Chai. I mean, he loves it.
Yeah.
And he's, I think he's next town over or something. It was just a coincidence.
Yeah.
But interesting that you went in and you probably saw a lot more processed product, and yours is more authentic.
Yep.
And that's where the story starts.
So Pemba, right now you're involved with a restaurant, which is typically known to be like a risky endeavor, and like any type of restaurant.
Yep.
And you have this, the Sherpa Chai, which you're promoting. In both situations, you saw these needs for the product, or for each to fill a niche.
Yep.
Where did you develop this business sense? Like, how did you go from being a climbing guide in Nepal to developing the sense and seeing two perfect niches for exactly what you do?
Well, I do have a business sense since I was a little kid. I mean, I started my adventure travel company when I was in my early 20s, and I was very successful with that. And after that, I did like different things. So really, I'm an entrepreneur, and I like doing business. And and every time that I see there's a future, there's a need, and I'll go for it.
I think Pemba's selling it short too for you guys. He's done, besides starting the adventure business and the restaurant, he's also been an entrepreneur in the real estate market. He owns a lot of properties in Boulder County, which has enabled him to bring lots of people from Nepal to come and be able to first go to school here and work at the restaurant and have a place to live and all the rest of this kind of stuff. I think, just my opinion, but I think something about that, the climbing mentality is kind of that go for it mentality, have no fear, if you will, and taking that leap of faith and starting a business, which rightfully scares many people, right? Clearly is not an issue for Pemba.
Yeah, risk assessment. You were talking about a second ago, David, about bringing over people from Nepal over here. Mm-hmm. Pemba, when did that start, and how many people have you helped out?
Well, I helped it out, quite a few people, and when you have a company, then, you're able to, it's a process and it costs lots of money. Once you show them that, you're doing business, and then you pay X amount of money to the government, and you can prove that you can pay so much money to the employees, then they let you come. But it's not an easy task. This whole bringing people here, it's a process.
And the employees that you have over at Sherpa Chai or over at the restaurant, are they all Sherpa?
Sherpa and Nepali, yeah. Both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, help me understand this. The difference between Sherpa and Nepali.
Well, the Nepali, if you go to Nepal, okay, if you land them in Kathmandu, you're almost gonna feel like you landed in India, because there are more people look like Indian looking, and those are all migrated from India, okay, to Nepal many years ago. And there's a very small group of people like me. I look more like Mongolian or Japanese or Asian looking, and my ancestor, they came from Mongolia over to Tibet, and then over the Himalayan pass to Nepal, and then they settle in the mountain region in Nepal. And there are a small group of people in Nepal, and those are the Sherpas, which are, they have very different culture, completely different language, different dress. Yeah, almost everything is different. But they live together, the Sherpas speak Nepali, and they go to Nepali school.
Right. Another thing I wanted to talk about is all these social initiatives that you've undertaken. So we talked about the bridge, but we haven't talked about some of these other things. You went back to Nepal and created a hydro dam. Yeah, tell me about that.
Well, I've been doing this kind of projects. I was telling you, since almost about 30 years ago. 25 years ago, I think that's when I built the bridge. And then, my belief is like the surest path of meaningful life is service, acting for common good. So I have those kind of things in my mind all the time. But as you know, that Nepal had an earthquake in 2000, 15, and that caused lots of problem in Nepal. And after that, I was kind of heavily involved. And then they started doing a different project there, where we raise money, selling chai and different climbing communities. I mean, we raised $110,000, helped build 282 houses. We built hydropowers and some other projects.
And is this common? You said to serve, basically serve people. Is that common within the Sherpa community?
It is common, I mean, those who can.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe if you can, it's a great things to do,
So Pemba, I understand that, one of the other things, one of these really special things that you've done too is adopted, I think it's 4 children. And I've also, 3.
I adopted 3 girls, yeah.
Okay. And I've also heard other people in your company, other Sherpa, doing the same trait, or does that come from seeing you doing something incredibly special and that kind of filters down?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's kind of, I mean, I've seen it like once I start doing these kind of things. I've also seen like my friends or some other people are doing similar things, and which make me feels good. I feel that I'm kind of, showing a role model for, for others.
Right.
Yeah.
It's to some degree too. This is a cultural thing for Nepalese and for Sherpa, because I mean, the attitudes that Pemba expresses here and talks about, I've experienced now with many people from there that I've come to know. I think it's a cultural part of the culture of giving back that's just so pervasive in everything that is part of the Nepalese and the Sherpa people and how they live their lives. They come from places of, in many cases, extreme poverty, but yet these people still find ways to really to help nurture others and support others and create community in ways that are, frankly, I think we lose a lot of that in our modern Western culture.
While we have you here, where'd you come from? you weren't one of the original people in the company. How did you get involved?
I got involved because I've been an entrepreneur in other aspects, and a friend that has an interest in Sherpa Chai kept giving me bottles of chai to take home. I wasn't a big fan of coffee or tea; didn't really drink that much, but I mean now I do. But I'd take it home, and I have a wife and 3 daughters, and they just love the stuff and would be drinking it. Like literally, I would turn around in the morning, and one of the daughters would be at the refrigerator holding an empty bottle of Sherpa Chai and say, "Can you get another bottle, Dad?" And so after 3 or 4 months of this, I said, I got to meet Pemba. I've been hearing these stories, and after I met with Pemba, I was intrigued enough to want to get involved and invest in the company, and one thing led to another, and so now it's doing a lot more than just investing. So back to 70 hours a week working to grow this business for the goals that we've all set out, which include also goals to help give back to the community from which this came. So we've been talking about building a scholarship fund for Sherpa children so that they can go to university, for example. Dealey, our head brewer, comes from a little village, and his goal has been to build a community center and urgent care for the older people in the village that he grew up in. And he kept talking about, one day when I retire, that's what I'm going to do. And I was like, well, why would we wait till you retire? Let's get this thing going now. So that's another thing that we have as a mission that we want to build for, is to help do that. And so, and I'm sure, frankly, a lot of other things will come up as we continue to do this, because there's a need, and because that's part of the culture of giving that Pemba exudes, and that kind of just, it permeates everything that takes place around here.
So are you an honorary Sherpa?
I hope so, though. One day at least. Maybe. Never. I don't know. We'll see. Ask Pemba.
Let's just go back to the climbing for just 1 second. So how important is climbing in your life?
Well, I mean, that's who I am, and that's what I enjoy. And I think anybody, whether you're playing golf or volleyball or soccer, I think it's important to do what you enjoy doing it. And
Mhm.
for me, I really enjoy doing it, and I feel it is important for me to do it.
You should see the restaurant. In all honesty, I wish we had some pictures because the restaurant is completely decorated with pictures of the Himalayas and mountain climbing gear and ice axes and crampons and Nepalese flag. I mean, it's kind of a little mini museum to climbing in the Himalayas and in other parts of the world. So it's very interesting.
I got to come to Boulder just to check that out. So, Pemba, I know nothing about climbing. And if you saw the size of me, I would hate to have to burden any donkey, mule, anything because I would crush them. Um, but anyway, what has been your hardest mountain or cliff to climb, and why?
Well, I think mostly in the Himalayas.
Mhm.
I've climbed almost 30 plus years in the Himalayas. And I've been buried in avalanche. I've been frostbitten in all my
Wow. Hold
fingers.
it. You've been buried in an avalanche.
Yep. Yeah, and all my fingers have got perseverance. And I think in the Himalayas, I think those are some of the hardest climb I've done.
This avalanche, how do you're buried in an avalanche. How far down were you?
I got swept away. My tent was all ripped and all whatnot. But it's not, luckily, it's not dangerous enough that killed me. I was able to get it out,
Yeah.
even though my gear were destroyed. But I was fine.
Wow. Yeah, I wouldn't even have thought, but
Yeah.
I guess that's one of the challenges too.
Yep.
If
Yeah.
an act of God. My gosh.
And it's a hard sport. It's a very tough sport, and I like it. I mean, I think if people can, I think everybody should do a little bit tough sport.
Yeah.
I believe it teaches you. It also teaches you how to deal with difficult things in life.
Let's say that you don't get it first time, second time,
Yeah.
10th time.
Yeah.
You keep doing. One of the things I hear all the time on this podcast is to be resilient.
Yep.
And that's a challenging sport like that. Yeah, I can see how that could help people. Now let's bring Dave and Pemba back on. I want to talk about a bit more about these social initiatives. So we've talked about a possible community center that you guys are doing right now. Anything else planned for social initiatives right now?
We are working on one initiative, which is in the early stages, so we have to wait and see because of the coronavirus issues about whether we're going to get back to Nepal. There is a gentleman who we want to sponsor on an Everest expedition in the spring, and in part, what we want to do is do this to raise money for ideally for a scholarship is what we've been talking about that would be for Sherpa people, for the children of Sherpas who want to go on to go to university, etc. We had talked about the idea of trying to build some schools in the Kumbo or in these regions, but it's very isolated, remote, and it would be difficult to do. And so I think better than that would be to provide funds so that when these kids want to go, that there is money that they can go to university. And this can be a game changer clearly for the kids of this region. They'll be able to go to school and get degrees in information technology or become nurses, etc. Dealey has adopted a girl very early on who, at least as I understand, came from a caste that would probably never have been able to pay for school, and now because Dealey adopted her, she's actually a nurse in Kathmandu and married with a child and having a successful life. And so that's one of the goals of what we're working on for this project for the spring. And if that works, then hopefully we'll have a nice big pool of money that we can put aside to help fund educational stuff for children of Sherpas.
You let me know, and we'll do anything we can to promote it as well.
I'll talk more about it, but there's a lot of other moving parts and the people involved, and until we get things finalized and actually know for sure that we'll be able to go, that a lot of Nepal has been closed because the coronavirus has been devastating, obviously, to the people of all the world, but Nepal as well. And they certainly don't have anywhere near the kind of infrastructure to take care of sick people that we have in this part of the world. But everybody seems confident that things will be okay by the end of the spring, which is when this would take place. So,
Hey guys and gals, that's it for part 1 of our interview with Dave and Pemba. Make sure to tune in later this week to hear the rest of the interview. If you like what you're hearing, make sure to subscribe to the podcast and like and share us on all the social media channels. All of them. Every single one. Anyway, that's enough of me, and I'll see you later this week.